Yeah.
Let's face it, when it comes to mainstream fantasy anime today, our options are usually isekais and sometimes crippling depression, which I may or may not know about.
Let me in. Let me in.
Yet wouldn't you believe it? This past year we got Frieren and Dungeon Meshi, two pure fantasy adventure anime, the best I've seen in years. I don't know what I did to deserve this, Japan, but thank you. But now that the dust has settled, it has left me wondering, which one is better? Yes, I know it's pointless to compare, but I want to have some fun with it, okay? So in this video, I'll be comparing these two shows across 10 different categories, and whichever one wins the most, I'll crown as the victor. As you can see, I made sure to pick a nice variety of categories here, because I shall leave no stone unturned in my quest to determine which anime is better. And I'll be totally objective. By the way, no major spoilers here, so if you haven't watched these shows, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So let's waste no time and get right to it. Best Girl. Alright guys, let's get the big one out of the way first, shall we? So Best Girl. Who is the best girl out of both of these shows? I say it's between the elves, so Frieren and Marcille.
Fight.
Okay, well in an actual fight, Frieren probably destroys Marcille, but for this category, it's about the complete package. So let's start with the strengths and weaknesses of Frieren. She's super overpowered, she's an absolute savage against demons, but at the same time, she's super chill and likes to read during her free time.
Perfection.
Now I'm well aware, Frieren is not 100% perfect. Yes, she's got a couple of character flaws, okay? But like, you know, like minor ones, okay? Like minor, like no big deal, okay? Don't be so picky. In conclusion, Frieren is 10 out of 10. End of discussion. Alright, now let's talk about Marcille from Dungeon Meshi. I mean, what is there to say, right? She's freaking hilarious. I'm always looking for her facial reactions because they're just that good. And to top it off, she's bubbly, caring, loyal, and actually helpful. Sometimes. Okay, she's a little bit over the top sometimes, alright? But she's trying her best, and that's all that matters. Marcille, also 10 out of 10. So as you can see, both Frieren and Marcille are obviously perfect. Which one is best girl though, right? So, well, I have a method when it comes to resolving these types of issues. Let's just call it a tie. Best guy. Best characters. Okay, guys, I promise moving forward, I will tone it down a little bit. I won't mess around as much. I don't know what it was, but Frieren had this way of introducing characters that were great and felt meaningful to the story. Not just Frieren, Fern, Stark, but all the characters they meet along the way in this journey that they go on. All the characters from Frieren's past. All the demon characters. Even that one demon that was cursed in stone. We got to see him for what? 2 minutes? Yet even he is actually important to the story. That's just great writing. So yeah, Frieren really killed it with its characters. Now as far as Dungeon Meshi is concerned, I don't think the side characters in the show are as interesting as those in Frieren. But with that said, okay, the main four characters, that they're so good. They're just the best. Laios, Senshi, Chilchuk. Are any of those guys as great as Himmel? No. But it doesn't matter. When you put them together with Marcille, it's just like magic. There's this chemistry between them that just makes them so likable. I think the fact that they have to work together as a team since none of them are overpowered really adds to that. Because we see them rely on each other's strengths and they take turns taking the lead. And I really like seeing that. And these guys are just freaking hilarious together. Like non-stop. So at the end of the day, I thought about calling it a tie between Frieren and Dungeon Meshi for best characters, but something about those main four characters in Dungeon Meshi left an impression on me. They just felt like family after watching the show, so
I don't have friends. I got family.
Best voice acting. Well, if you want to talk about talent, it's not even close, okay? Frieren, they were not messing around. They brought in all the big guns when it comes to voicing their characters. And they didn't just slap together a bunch of talent just for the heck of it. The directors used it to set the tone of Frieren, and we got this incredibly chill vibe of a show.
わかるだろフリーレン
Obviously, Dungeon Meshi had great voice acting here in its own right. I will even say the voice actress's work on Marcille was my favorite between both shows. But yeah, Frieren overall just went the extra mile here in my opinion, so at the end of the day, this point is going to Frieren. But if we're going English dub, I'm gonna go with Dungeon Meshi because my man Pro ZD is voicing Senshi. That's just awesome. Best story. So in Frieren and Dungeon Meshi, they both have this main objective, right? This main story. In Frieren, they're trying to reach this heavenly realm, and in Dungeon Meshi, they're trying to rescue someone. But as you're watching both of these shows, at least for me, you just kind of forget about the main objective. Like, yeah, that's important. We gotta do that. But I'm kind of enjoying this adventure that we're going on right now, and I'd like it to stay that way. In Frieren, you're meeting all the different people and hitting up all the different towns and villages, right? And in Dungeon Meshi, you're exploring all the different levels of the dungeon and all the different monsters and all the different foods you can make out of them. Like, as long as the quality of the writing stays the same, can we just get 200 more episodes of this? The journey really is better than the destination. But if you were to ask me which journey I've been enjoying more so far, I would give it to Frieren because of the fact that Frieren just hits you on an emotional level, while Dungeon Meshi is more lighthearted. And yes, there will be people who prefer that, but I think what Frieren is pulling off is something more special because it got me thinking about life and not to take things for granted, and I really like that. So yeah, for that, I give best story to Frieren. Best originality. Both of these shows are obviously a breath of fresh air, okay? But with that said, if you were to ask me which anime are similar to Frieren, I could name a few. Like Violet Evergarden, Wandering Witch, Kino's Journey, Mushishi. I mean, obviously they're not exactly the same, but you know, you can see some similarities. But when it comes to Dungeon Meshi, I don't know. Maybe Yuru Camp? The point is, I'm not quite sure I've seen an anime quite like Dungeon Meshi, but I'm sure I'll show a couple of examples while I edit this video, but I stand by the fact that this show feels pretty unique. I mean, we have a group of adventurers exploring a dungeon, D&D style, while trying not to starve to death. It's great! So if you were to ask me which anime is more originaler, I would give it to Dungeon Meshi. Best pacing. Oh man, Frieren fans, you're gonna kill me on this one. Okay, as far as pacing is concerned, the beginning and middle of Frieren is a masterpiece, okay? I loved how the story took its time and I thought the pacing was perfect. But then we hit the end of the season with the exam arc, and honestly, I felt that the pacing fell off a little there. Because we're suddenly introduced to like 15 new characters all at once, and now we're bouncing between each one of their perspectives. Here's Ubel's perspective, now here's Dengen's perspective, now here's this guy's past, and now we're following Frieren again. Don't get me wrong, I do love all the new side characters. It's just that for how short the exam arc was, I think the pacing would have been better if they focused on fewer of the characters. Meanwhile, for Dungeon Meshi, I felt like the pacing was consistent from the beginning of the season to the end. It does help that they focus on the main characters for pretty much the entirety of the season, but they do have side characters, and the show just does a really good job of slowly introducing them throughout the season. Overall, I just think that Dungeon Meshi handled the pacing better than Frieren, so I'm giving this point to Dungeon Meshi. Best design. The most obvious difference for me when it comes to character designs is the hair colors. Frieren, you got the rainbow hair colors, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, pink. Perfection. Pretty standard for anime. While for Dungeon Meshi, all the hair colors are more or less natural. Personally, I'm more of a natural guy, but to each their own. Although I will say my favorite designs are Frieren and Fern's staffs, oddly enough. They just look great. But when it comes to the world design, I mean, you gotta give it to Dungeon Meshi, right? Because the world building is what it's all about. That's the core of Dungeon Meshi. So I tip my hat to them there. I mean, there are details to Frieren I really like how the story is set after the Demon King was killed. That's different from your usual fantasy anime. I also like how certain spells are like tech that can be researched and improved. But Dungeon Meshi is just overflowing with ideas. I mean, who thinks about swinging around holy water in a jar to kill ghosts, which ultimately makes sorbet? I mean, that's just too good. Too good, guys. Just shut it down at that point. So I give this point to Dungeon Meshi. Best animation. So we had Madhouse that animated Frieren and Studio Trigger that animated Dungeon Meshi. Both obviously did a phenomenal job, and I want to thank both of them for not using crappy CGI when they easily could have. But I will say, if we're doing a direct comparison between Madhouse's work and Studio Trigger, I mean, come on. No question, it's Madhouse's work on Frieren, okay? We're talking about Madhouse after all. Just another stunning looking anime as usual. While I absolutely loved Studio Trigger's work on Dungeon Meshi, I wouldn't put it at the same level as Frieren. I mean, Madhouse really went out of its way to improve the fight scenes from the manga, while Studio Trigger more or less was just connecting the dots, you know, which is fine, but looks less impressive. And sometimes I would notice the animation quality drop a little bit. I mean, I'm no expert, okay? It's just my own observation. Meanwhile, for Frieren, I never felt that way. In fact, sometimes I was feeling the opposite, completely blown away. Like that one time Frieren decided to show off all her spells. I was just like, okay, Madhouse Daddy, chill. We get it. Woo! So yeah, 1 point to Frieren. And lastly, best music. And being tied at 4 points apiece, this will decide the winner. The music. Okay, first let's talk opening and ending songs. For Dungeon Meshi, both opening and ending songs for the show I think were perfect. Like, they all got that chill fantasy adventure vibe. I don't think you could ask for anything more to set the tone for this series here. For Frieren though, if I'm being honest, I'm not a big fan of the first opening song. Yeah, I know, sorry. I just think that the upbeat music wasn't the right choice to start off the series. However, we do get the masterpiece that is the end song for Frieren, my favorite overall, so we're good. In the end though, for opening and ending songs, I would give the slight advantage to Dungeon Meshi. But when we're talking about the soundtrack, the background music, can we just give our man Evan Call a round of applause? Because I mean, jeez. The soundtrack to Frieren is one of the absolute best I have ever heard in all of anime. Dungeon Meshi's is good. It's not particularly memorable, but it does the job and I'm fine with it. But Frieren is a show full of emotion, whether we have a calm moment, an intense moment, a silly moment, or a sad moment. Evan Call's soundtrack elevates all of that and then some. Whatever advantage that Dungeon Meshi may have with the theme songs, Frieren's soundtrack surpasses that. So best music? And that's it, guys. We've reached the end. The final score? 5 points to Frieren, 4 points to Dungeon Meshi, and 1 tie. So that means after a completely, totally objective analysis, I have concluded, Frieren, you are in fact the better anime. Congratulations. Make no mistake though, Dungeon Meshi has become one of my favorites. It's original, has phenomenal world building, and is freaking hilarious. But when it comes to Frieren, the quality of the production is just too good. The voice acting, the animation, the music, all perfectly complementing a memorable story that made me both smile and cry. Thank you for the good times, Frieren. And you too, Himmel. You beautiful man. That's right, guys. My fantasy anime of the year is Frieren Beyond Journeys. Who's ready for the Demon Slayer Infinity Castle arc?